Hello, my name is Shane Young with Bold Zebras, and today we're going to start our two-part video series on going from zero to SharePoint 2013 using Microsoft Azure the proper way. Right, we did a previous video on how to do it quick and dirty, so I thought this time around we'd do one with a proper step-by-step install. The end result is going to be a SharePoint Server 2013 installed with Service Pack 1 and the June 2016 cumulative updates that get you some of the hybrid features, and it will fully configure all the service applications and a whole bunch of databases, making sure that we don't have any GUIDs in our database names, no spaces, none of that stuff, right? A nice clean environment that is production worthy, and I've done for several clients over the years. Several is probably an understatement, hundreds of clients actually. We're going to do all this with a combination of central administration and Microsoft PowerShell. A lot of what will be covered is actually going to be adapted from our good old book, Professional SharePoint 2013. We've learned a few tricks since then the book came out, so looking forward to expanding on some of my earlier thoughts. We'll dive into different pieces, kind of bring some experiences and some stories along the way. So in this video, we're going to talk about laying the foundation. So I've already created a couple of VMs, a domain controller VM and a SQL Server VM, so I'm going to talk to you about how I created each one, why I did what I did, without actually going through all the steps because those are covered in other videos. So once we've done that, then we'll actually walk through creating a Windows 2012 VM, we'll install SharePoint Server 2013, we'll install Service Pack 1, and the June cumulative update. We'll talk about that as we go along, but we'll actually walk through step by step how to do the install. And then I'll lead us up into video 2, and so video 2 will be all about configuring SharePoint. So we're going to create a new SharePoint farm using PowerShell. We'll use a combination of PowerShell and central administration to create all the necessary service applications. We'll create your first web applications, your first site collection, and we're going to do all of that with a least privileged security-minded set. So we'll probably end up with, I think, 6 or 7 service accounts, and we're just going to give each one of those service accounts just the minimum permissions it needs, right? More indicative of what you would actually do in a production deployment for yourself. So along the way, I hope to share all my thoughts and reasons. I've been doing SharePoint consulting for roughly 8 million years, so I think I've got a few things to add. So hopefully we'll talk through all those and make you feel real comfortable about building SharePoint 2013 on Azure when this is all said and done. Great, well, let's get started. The first part here is pretty easy. We're going to log into our Azure portal and we're going to take a look at our VMs. Go over here, virtual machines. We're going to see that I've created the first virtual machine, DC1. We'll click on that. Taking a look at the DC1, you can see that this is a pretty standard build. I just used a standard image size. Went ahead and installed it, configured it to run on the contoso.com domain. And I did all this just using the step-by-step from the previous video, so that's linked right here. If you want to go watch the video on how to create an Azure forest on a domain controller, I did exactly those same steps. I made the changes. I put everything into a the East US. It's all in this resource group called Proper 2013, which is one of the keys because that way I'll be able to blow it all away easily. So DC1 built out, no surprises. It's contoso.com, easy. If we click on SQL 1, so for SQL 1, I built this using a Windows 2012 R2 image, and then I went and downloaded the SQL 2014 SP2 180-day trial, and then I walked through the install myself. Once I also added the machine to the contoso.com domain we created earlier. And the idea here is I just like to install SQL myself. That way I know what's there, I know what it's running as, I know what service account it is. You can definitely feel free to use one of the images that Microsoft makes available, or you can follow the steps. There is a link to, here's the video on step-by-step 2014. And if you're wondering why I use 2014, well, remember that there's 3 different versions of SQL that are supported with SharePoint 2013. 2008 R2 SP1, 2012, or 2014, all the 64-bit edition, of course. And so the only one that there was a 180-day trial at this point in time is the SQL 2014. So that's why I used that particular image. I haven't done any of the security changes to SQL yet, or the firewall changes. We'll kind of cover all of that in context when it comes up in the configuring video. But that gets us to the DC and the SQL servers up and running and ready for us. So this next step is we need to create the VM for SharePoint. So under virtual machines, we're going to click add, and here we're going to click on Windows Server. Now when it comes to SharePoint 2013, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of, I don't want to say misinformation, but a lot of contradictory information out there on whether or not SharePoint 2013 can run on Windows 12 R2. The long story is, yes it can if you have a set of bits that have Service Pack 1 pre-built into them. So if you can get that off of, if you have a TechNet subscription or a volume license agreement or in the partner network, you can get that. But the 180-day trial that Microsoft makes available is only 2013, the base install. And so with 2003 base, you can really only use Windows Server 2012 or Windows Server 2008 R2. So for this video, I'm going to use Server 2012. So we'll click on that. We'll make sure it's using Resource Manager and click Create. And so why that process is, one of the things to keep in mind is if you do decide to do 2012 R2 because you have bits with Service Pack 1 pre-built into them, that's great. But after you finish that install, you still need to go and install Service Pack 1 back over the top, because it turns out that the image with Service Pack 1 pre-baked into it isn't exactly right either. It just, putting SharePoint 2013 on Windows 2012 R2 is just so awkward that I've just decided to avoid it altogether. You don't have to, there are ways around it, but if you do, make sure you do it in the right step. If you're like, hey, why not slipstream? Because that's an option. It turns out that if you slipstream Service Pack 1 onto a 2013 RTM, that is an unsupported state because something about the way the packaging changed, you can't even slipstream. So just tread lightly. That's my advice to you. So let's give our VM a name. We'll just name it SP1. VM disk type SSD is good. For username, I'm going to use Shane. For password, I will use my super secret one that you don't actually know. Haha. And then for resource group, I want to use existing, and I'm going to make sure that I put it in the same resource group proper 2013 as everything else. That's just going to make my maintenance, cleanup, and all that stuff easy later. I am in the East US because I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's close to me. So good. Click OK. For choose a size here, I'm actually going to click on View All. And so you guys will want to put some real thought maybe into kind of what you're going to use for size, because yours will be, you know, maybe a production environment. For me, this VM's only going to last an hour or two while I make this video series, but I am going to go ahead and use 4 cores and 14 gigs. And the reason for that is it runs a little faster, so it'll make making the videos for me a little faster for you. But as you go through, just think it through, make sure you're meeting the SharePoint minimum requirements and you're meeting any production needs you might have. So I'm going to hit select. For optional settings, I'm not going to change anything. I want to make sure the virtual network is the same, so it's proper 2013, it's the same as the other one, so that's good. I'll go ahead and change the security group to the same one as my domain controller. That just gives me one group of firewall permissions and things like that to manage. I'm not going to mess with any extensions. You could definitely do that if that was part of your set. And then availability sets. I'm not doing this because I'm just making a one SharePoint server machine. But if you were making multiple and you were going to have multiple of each tier, you'd want to have 2 web front ends. You'd have both those in the same availability set. 2 search servers, you'd have both those in an availability set. Just keep in mind you might need to plan this out ahead of time because you can't do availability sets after the fact. You have to provision the VM with the availability set created correctly. So I'm going to ignore all that for now. We'll click OK. This last screen, just make sure that I typed everything in good. I did, so we'll say OK. Alright, so this VM is going to start provisioning. It'll probably take 5 or 6 minutes. So I'm going to hit pause while that happens, and I'll see you in just a second. And just like that, thanks to the magic of editing, SharePoint server is ready to go. So we're going to click Connect, and then we're going to Save As. As you guys have seen in other videos, I like to save these in this folder C:\Azure. So there's the DC and the SQL one. We'll save SharePoint right beside it. We'll click Save. And then I'm going to click Open Folder. And because this image is not R2, it doesn't resize naturally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it and say Edit. And for display, I'm going to change it from full screen to 1920 by 1080. Back over to General and say Save. And so now we can click Connect. And for the username, we're going to do more choices. And we'll say use different account. And we're going to use the local account, so SP1 Shane. And then the password is that. Alright, so now it's logged in. So from the server manager here, we're going to do 2 changes. So we're going to say configure this local server. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn off the IE security settings. We're going to set those to off because it drives me bonkers. So say OK. Usually I'd fix my time zone stuff, but I didn't on the other machine, so we'll ignore that for now. And then we're going to click on Work Group, and we're going to say Change, and we're going to go to Domain, and our good old friend Contoso.com. Click OK. log in as the domain administrator for Contoso, which is Shane as well. Click OK. Welcome to Contoso domain. Great, thank you. OK. And close. So now I need to restart. So we'll hit restart. And so while the restart's happening, we need to make jump over to the domain controller. So we're going to double click on that guy. And now that Server Manager is open, what we need to do is we need to create a SharePoint install account that we're going to use to install SharePoint. So Tools, Active Directory, Users and Computers. Then we're going to click on the little new user icon. First name is SharePoint. Last name is Install. And we're going to do sp_install. We're going to put in our little password here. And won't expire. Remember, I'm using the same password for everything because this VM environment is going to literally live an hour while I do all these videos, and then it's going to be gone. You should be using different usernames and passwords. Well, obvious usernames, I'm showing that. We should be using different passwords for everything, right? Managing things properly to meet your security needs. So, okay, so SharePoint install is created, and it's just a regular domain user. So that's good. That's all we needed. So we'll minimize this. And then we're going to jump over to the SQL Server. Well, look at that. The SQL Server opened, and I changed shirts. I'm going to explain a little more later what happened exactly, but let's just say that I had some major issues with the SQL resolution. So I recorded all this successfully, but it was just unwatchable for whatever reason. So I'm going to go back and re-record the SQL portion so it looks nice for you guys, because I like you that much. Okay, so we're on the SQL Server, and so what we need to do is we need to open Management Studio. So I'm going to hit the Start button, and I'm going to type in Manage. And I'm going to click the SQL 2014 Management Studio. When it opens up, we're going to just hit Connect because those are all correct. And so the first thing we're going to do while we're in here is we're going to go to Security and then Logins. And we're going to right click on Logins and say New Login. And what we need to do is we need to give Contoso SP install, the account we just created, a access to do all the things that SharePoint needs it to do. So that is configured. And then we'll go down here to Server Roles, and we need to give it DB Creator and Security Admin. Click OK. So what will happen is when we do all the install work, log into SharePoint install, and then we run Config Wizard, we'll be logged in as SP install. We're going to give it a farm account, and then it's going to set up all the permissions for the farm account for us because we gave SP install the access that it needed. So it'll do all the heavy lifting as long as we make that change. The second change that we need to make here on the SQL Server, so we're going to right click on our SQL Server, and we're going to do Properties. And we need to go to Advanced. And if you scroll to the bottom here, it says Max Degrees of Parallelism. It's currently set to 0. SharePoint requires it to be 1. So we'll say OK. And the reason for that is the degrees of parallelism says, hey, for a given SQL command, if it's set to 0, SQL Server figures out how many processors to run that command across. For SharePoint, that's not supported. For SharePoint, if a stored procedure or a SQL command runs, it has to run across just one core, or SharePoint loses some things. So in order for SharePoint to go forward, you have to be set to 1. So that does it for the SQL Management Studio. The last change we need to make here on the server is we're going to hit Start, and then we're going to type in Fire. Who doesn't like fire? And we're going to go to the Windows Firewall with Advanced Security, and we need to make a new inbound rule. So I'll say New Rule. And what we need to do is we need to open the SQL port. So we'll click Port and Next, and then TCP, and then specify local port is 1433 because that's where our SQL Server runs on. Say Next. Allow the connection from anywhere because it's all in one safe little contained network. So Next. Name SQL port 1433, and say Finish. Bammo whammo, we have a SQL rule. We can close out of the Firewall Manager. So that should get all the stuff configured for the SQL Server for us. So let's minimize SQL Server. And then back over here, SharePoint 1 should be long done rebooting. So we're going to double click on SP1. We'll drag this little guy up here and say More Choices, use a different account. And so the first time here we want to log in as Contoso Shane. So that's our domain administrator. There's our password. Say OK. Now that the VM's up, what we need to do is we need to go to Tools, and then Computer Management, and then Local Users and Groups. We'll expand that out, expand Groups, and we'll go to Administrators and Add. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make the SP install account that we just did all those permissions for a local administrator on this box. So we'll apply, OK. We'll close this, And then now we will go over here because it's one of those weird images and do settings and then power and then disconnect. And then now we'll log back into the VM. And this time we'll do more choices again. Use a different account. We want to do Contoso SP install. And then our fancy password. We can tell it to remember me because now for a while we're going to use that one. So we'll say OK. All right, so now this is logged back in. So we'll go ahead and close out a server manager. We don't need it for the time being. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to open up Internet Explorer. So down here, start Internet Explorer. And yes, use these settings. OK. And so then we hit the little settings over here though, and Internet Options and Security. And for the Internet Zone, we need to do a custom level. And what we need to do is we need to go down here and allow downloads. So file downloads are disabled by default. So enable, click OK, yes, and OK. Because now what we need to do is we need to go and download all the different bits that we're going to need for this process. So we're going to go to the TechNet Evaluation Center. There it is. We'll click on that. We'll also go ahead and close out of MSN and expand out this window. And so for keyword up here, we're going to type in SharePoint 2013 and say go. Now in reality, I don't care where you get your SharePoint 2013 from, like we talked about earlier. If you've got a volume license or an MSDN subscription or something like that, no big deal. Go get SharePoint Server 2013 wherever you like. This is where I'm getting it because this is where all the cool kids do it. So we're going to say sign in. All right, and so I just edited out all of my personal information, and now you can see that the download prompt is here. And so it says open or save. I'm going to do save as. And I'm going to go to my computer, the C drive. I'm going to create a new folder called install. I like to keep all the bits that I ever install in one place. So install right there and hit save. So that is going to start putting that file there. While you're here though, what I need you to do is I need you to get the key. So if you hit pre-install information, there's your product key. And that is the 180-day trial, so you're not stealing my key. It's the same key for all of us. You thought you were smart. And we're going to go to C install. And I'm just going to do a new good old-fashioned text document. And I'm going to call it key. Open that up and paste it in so that way we have it when we need it a little bit later. Click OK, click save. Alright, so that is downloading. And so while that's downloading, I also need to go get two other things. So the next thing we want to get, we'll open a new tab to do this, is we need to get Service Pack 1 the second version, if you will. So the way that I would find is I'm going to go to www.toddclint.com. I'm going to ponder what mean things I'm going to do to his face when I make this video. And so right here, all I need to do is I'm going to go to SharePoint 2013 builds. And if we scroll down this list, what we're going to see is that he has a list of every build number with every patch that creates that build number since SharePoint 2013 came out. It's a pretty handy list. So the first thing I want to get off of this list is the SharePoint Service Pack 1 Mark II. Don't get the first Service Pack 1. It does bad things. So we want this one. So right there, we're going to click on download. We're going to click download here. As you can guess, we're going to hit save as. And we're going to put this in the install folder as well. All right. We'll back up again, back up. And so then the next thing we need on Todd's machine, or from Todd's list, is we want to use Windows 2012. We talked about that. But we're going to use SQL 2014. Well, SQL 2014 support didn't come out until April 2014 CU. This is the reason I'm reshooting this video. I made a mistake here the first time I made the video. Oops. But so I don't want the April 2014 CU. There's been a lot of stuff fixed and done since then. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to tell you that as of today, right, middle of August of 2016, that I would at a minimum use the June 2016 CU. So this guy right here. So I'm going to hit download. And so there's a couple of things to consider. I'll hit download first though. Alright, this was my big mistake, so pay attention. Wake up, get an extra drink of coffee. I, for some reason, only downloaded this guy the first time, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me why nothing worked. In reality, I need all of these. I wish they'd make that more clear, that I need the Uber update plus the 2 cab files. And the reason for that is that because they store this stuff on a SQL server behind the scenes, it can only have a 2 gig file store. Well, 1.4 plus 1.4 plus 200, that's like 3 gigs. That would not fit. So they had to break it into smaller files. They made two 1.4 chunks and then this little leftover cruft. I don't know why. Either way, you need all 3 of these. So don't make the same mistake I did. Get all 3 of these. Or you can reshoot this video in a different color shirt and have to tell the whole world you screwed up. Oh well. So we're going to hit next. And it's blocking my pop-up. So I'll say allow once. Alright, so yeah, make sure you do 3 save as's here. So there's 1. Hit save. Hit save as again. That's 2. And then save as a 3rd time. So 3. Alright, so if we hit view downloads real quick, you guys can see that I've got, looks like the little 2 cab got downloaded, Service Pack 1 got downloaded, SharePoint Server itself, and 2 of the Uber updates are still downloading. While those are downloading real quick, I want to talk about patches. So let's go back over here to Todd's blog. So I'll hit back a couple times because that's the way you navigate the internet. Alright, so generally speaking, what I like to tell you is you only want to install a CU is if you can say, I have this problem and it fixes it, and that's why I'm installing it, right? They're not tested the same way that service packs are. Sometimes they cause issues. That's why Todd has his bugs, notes, and regressions, so you can see anything he knows it gets broken by. And if you read through these, they've all got something's broken or something's fixed. So we decided that the June 2016 update was the right one for right now because it adds a lot of the functionality for hybrid SharePoint. So if you want to do SharePoint 2013, you want to have the internet search and the user profile or the user my sites out in the internet and things like that. All of that is good and baked in the June 2016 update. So that's the one that we would choose today. At a minimum, remember, you have to have April 14 that CU because that adds the SQL 2014 support that we needed. Also remember that if you guys went and got your SharePoint install files from somewhere else, if you went and got your files from somewhere like TechNet or your partner site or whatever, and it says it has Service Pack 1 baked in, that's great and cute and all, but it's still not a solid version of Service Pack 1. So I would highly recommend that even if you install the version that has Service Pack 1 on, that you install Service Pack 1 again over the top. It's not going to hurt anything. It's easy to do right now, and it just avoids little issues down the road. So that would be my suggestions to you guys. Alright, so let's check our view downloads again. So this is still running, so I'm going to hit pause until it finishes. They've all finished, so we'll close out of this. And we're now all done with IE, so we'll just close that all together, close all tabs. And so now we're ready to start installing SharePoint. So the first one we're going to start with is the actual bits, the RTM. So we're going to double click. And so what that did, because it's an IMG file, is it actually mounted the F drive for me. It extracted itself out and mounted the F drive. So on the F drive now, we've got a prerequisite installer. We're going to double click. We're going to say yes. And it's like, hey, I'm going to go download all this stuff, configure this stuff for you. Awesome possum. Click next. I accept all those terms. Next. Alright, so what this does, if you're not familiar with the prereq installers, it's going to configure things like the application server, web server roles, and things for you. And then it's going to go off to the internet and download about a dozen different little utilities that SharePoint needs to function properly. Now, if you have the problem where your server can't access the internet, it'd be really weird since you're doing an Azure video but whatever, we won't talk about it. There is ways to go and manually download all of these files. So there are TechNet articles that will walk you through download this, download this, download this, then copy them over to the server, however you deploy files to a server, and then run each one individually. Even if you run each one individually, though, you still want to run prereq installer because it'll still configure the IIS and that stuff for you, and then it'll just check that you downloaded the right version. And it's going to say, yep, you installed that, and it'll just skip over all those things you manually installed. So important little piece of advice. Also, last little piece of advice here is if this blows up on you all of a sudden, you're like, oh, why does it keep erroring out? It can't figure out how to do anything. What's probably happened to you, I checked the error log. The error log's very verbose, very clear. But remember, if you decided to use Windows 2012 R2 instead of Windows 2012, there's no way to do this because the preparation tool doesn't understand how to do things on R2. So unless you have the version that has Service Pack 1 kind of pre-built in, then it can do it on R2. Just makes you confused, gets crazy. Just follow along the videos and you'll be fine. Alright, so while this runs, I'm going to hit pause. All right, that actually ran pretty quick, so you can see it's ready to reboot. So I'm going to hit finish, and then I will restart the video as soon as I get logged back into the home or the screen. All right, that reboot took a little longer than normal because it had to configure the features and stuff. And here you can see that it's got an error message. Hey, I can't find the thing that I'm supposed to keep doing. It's trying to rerun prereq installer for me. So just click OK. That's completely normal, right? Because that's that whole image file mounting thing that we talked about before. So what are we going to do? We're just going to go back to C, install, double click on our file again. It'll mount it as the F drive again. And then we're just going to double click on prereq installer again. Click yes. Next. Read the license terms again. Click next. And so it's just going to pick up right where it left off. It knows, right? It does a good job of leaving markers, so it's not going to redo any work just because we weren't able to auto continue. So it's going to dive in and it's going to keep running. So I am going to hit pause until it says it wants to reboot again. Okay, so it's ready to reboot, so we'll hit finish. And just like last time, I'll restart the video as soon as I get back to the desktop. And we're back with our error message, so we'll say OK again. And as you probably know, right, we're going to drive into C, good old install, and SharePoint Server. It jumps us over to our F. We're going to run prerequisite installer one more time. Click yes. Next. Read those terms one more time. Next. So unfortunately, I've never found a good way to get the image file to mount and to stay permanently. There is some PowerShell out there that might do it, but I've just never messed with it. It's too complicated for a video anyway, so I'll just go through my play. All right, here's what we want though. Installation complete. Everything's been done. Yay! So we're going to hit finish, and now we're ready to run setup. We'll double click on that. We'll click yes. Oh, we need our key. Good thing we wrote it down, right? So computer, C, install, key. This is why I didn't want you to just keep it in your keyboard or your clipboard. We've rebooted 3 times. Copy 2 times, whatever. We'll close that. We'll close that. We will paste that in there. We'll say continue. Oh, more license terms to read. I accept. Hit continue. And so here, very important, we want to do a complete install, not a standalone. So we'll hit install now. And so just in case you're wondering, right, complete install, that's going to put all the bits and binary stuff on the machine for us, but it's not going to configure or do anything. And that's why we're going to walk through the video, how to install and configure and do everything. The other option below, standalone, also known as a basic install, also known as God kills a kitten every single time you use it, that particular method, what it'll do is it'll install a version of SQL Server for us, SQL Express, yay, 4 gig limit, or maybe it's a little more than that. It's something terrible though. And then it'll configure everything to use that environment, and then you're just stuck. You can't expand, you can't fix, you can't undo any of that. And the only way to really fix that problem is kind of like I did. I ended up in a green shirt, right? A different color shirt, because you have to delete the VM and start over and hope to explain to your video audience why you messed all that up. So stay away from the standard, basic, complete, or basic installs. Wherever those evil things are, don't do it. All right. So this is going to install the SharePoint Server 2013 trial. I'll hit pause until it finishes. Oh, that finished kind of fast. I didn't even get halfway through my first cat video, right? That's what you do as an administrator in the middle of the night when you're doing these things, right? You watch cat videos on the internet. I didn't even get to finish the video. All right, anyway, so this is done. So here it says, you know, run the configuration wizard, blah, blah, blah. You need to stop and uncheck this box, right? Because we don't want to run config wizard yet for 2 reasons. 1 is because we have other things to install. 2, because we need to run some PowerShell before we run config wizard, but we'll get to that later. So key message here, deselect that and hit close. And we'll close Server Manager while we're at it too. So now RTM bits are on the server. I want to put Service Pack 1 bits on the server. So I'm going to click on this guy and I'm going to say C and then install. And this one right here is our Service Pack 1 file. The key is the KB28 blah 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 blah. I know that's the Service Pack 1 KB because I'm a nerd that way. So double click on it and click yes. Oh, more stuff to read. I do. Click here and hit continue. Okay, so this is going to start extracting all the SP1 stuff and then putting all those bits in place as well. So we'll give this a minute to run and I'll go watch some cat videos while paint dries here. I'll see you in a second. So that took about 7 minutes, but the installation is complete. Hooray! All right, so then now the last thing to do is install our Uber update. And so for us, in this scenario, it was the June 2016. So I'm going to double click. And when this pop-up shows up, we'll say yes. We're going to read all that stuff again. Click here to accept the terms and hit continue. All right, and so like that, now it's off to the races. So I'll hit pause, and goodness, probably get to watch a lot of cat videos. I saw some Pokemon gym battle thing earlier. Maybe I'll go check that out. So, all right, I'll see you in a second. Hey, that wasn't too bad. About 10 minutes or so. I actually got up, walked around, got a little exercise. I know, crazy. All right, so that's all done. So just to recap, we installed RTM, Service Pack 1, and the June 2016 CU. And so SharePoint's now ready to go. So now the next step would be to jump into PowerShell and start configuring our farm. The good news is this video is now long enough. So instead, we're going to start part 2 of the series in the next video, and that way you can watch that as a lovely masterpiece that it's going to be. The real question will be, will I be in a red shirt or this aqua green sweet v-neck? I don't know. We'll find out. Anyway, so check the next video out. As always, if you like this video, definitely subscribe to the channel. Leave me any comments down below, or if you want, you can hit me up on Twitter at ShanesCals. Or if you want to work together, right? I do consulting on SharePoint and Azure, Office 365, all those fun things. You can hit me up on good old boldzebras.com. Great. Well, I'll see you in the next video.